Hello everyone, Kurt Holford here and welcome back to another episode from Hope Federal Labs. This is going to be an section video here, which really is going to be, it's going to go off of our not normal posting concept, and that's partially because I felt this is a part right here that need to be talked about, and I didn't give enough time here to discuss in between. And it really has to deal with describing why Fiore may hold the sword as far as how he depicts it within the manuscript. So before I get too far into this right here, I've just put together a little demonstration here about some of the anatomical and also material concepts that limit a user in holding a sword in different ways, and why the maestro may have prescribed through his writing and through his drawing a way to hold the sword. So with that being the case here, let's get into it. So this is just a quick video here that I want to talk about in regards to how Fiore has this, is prescribed to us in holding the sword within his manuscript. Full disclosure, there is nothing in the manuscript that he tells exactly how to grip a sword. All he says, like, as far as other than the fact of being one-handed or two-handed, or the 6 dissimilar guards. The only thing we have here are images that show us that he is holding the sword in such a fashion that he's had his hand on the pommel of the sword and his lead hand is towards the top front. Now, I have a couple of reasons why I think this is the case here that I want to share with people here, and I have some tools off to the side here that are going to aid me in this whole gripping portion of it. First and foremost, the sword of Fiore's era has got many different types of variants to it. What I have here is a Jesse Belsky stage sword that I had recreated to replicate the Cressy, which is an Albion recreation of a sword that may have been at Cressy. And I decided to have something like that fashion because Cressy is within the ballpark era of Fiore's time and whatnot, and perhaps also the arts that would have inspired him to have what he had as far as manuscripts. The reason why I use this right here is because, again, it gives a little bit of difference as far as how the handle looks like. And of course, there is the space here for us to hold it as such. And there's plenty of other manuscripts that would have us do the same thing as far as this goes. But for this right here, it lends itself to having the hand on the pommel. Now, again, depending on who you are practicing with and for, there becomes different concepts and variants right here that as far as how you grip this different type of tool. But for the purpose of what we're trying to understand here is why do we have the handle in the space that Fiore shows us? If I have both my hands like this right here, as far as my bare hands on the sword, then the sword becomes very easy for me to manipulate and use as I would any other type of situation. No problem, no muss, no fuss. It's very simple to be able to do what I need to do with it. But the problem with that is it comes into a space here is that eventually what happens, well, my hand is bigger than my hand. And what I'm talking about here is some form of protection that makes it so that I have a little bit of a bigger grip here. To start off with this, I'm going to utilize some leather gloves that I picked up from a company called Arm Street. I got them just so I could do some more experimentations with sharp blades. I think I kind of like the look of them. And in many ways here too, it's also what they utilize with inside their gauntlets. They're not necessarily padded for as much protection as some other type of sparring stuff out there, but it gives a good variant as far as a good experience as far as what it feels like when you're wearing gloves that would eventually have the capacity to be covered in metal. When I hold it like this, immediately right here, we can see my hand, I'm no longer able to grip as easily, and I almost have it where my my middle finger is in the crux of this pommel right here, and the rest of my hand wraps around. Now, if I hold it as such, I now have the ability to project this kind of fighting instrument into a forward space. It doesn't impede the lead hand in any way, shape, or form, and if anything right here, it adds to what I'm able to do because I have a little bit of a longer grip on this weapon. The other thing too that it does is it makes sure that my lead hand is not married to just being able to fight this way, but it can come down into that sword in one hand position, transition into and through, and allows me to be able to move it quite dexterously. So by having it like this on the hand, I have the sword's pommel is in the midst of my palm, and I wrap around. So again, basically my middle finger is in the crook of the pommel and extends forward with the sword. Another thing that happens here is it opens up a pocket in the hand, which allows the sword to oscillate back and forth. Now, I'm not saying to fight like this, but if my right hand is doing this, I have to be able to cock it back into different positions, which allows this levering mechanism to happen. Even though Fiore has got blows that strike with two hands, many of his techniques come down to covering and then moving in to a form of sword in one hand play action. I think that's a pretty cool instance. Another part about this right here is that by being here with this in my hand right here, I have the ability to disengage quicker. If my hand is here in the pommel space, it gets very tight, and I'm trying to make this all tight here. It actually, for me, jumbles up my hands, and I have to uncoil it to get out. By being on the end right here, it's immediate just being able to get up, and I can turn the sword as it's needed on this. So that kind of gives that bevel point of being able to shift and move. There's a little bit of pulsing right there, and how I can move in different directions. So that is the sword utilizing leather. Now let's put on some gauntlets. And again, these are from Arm Street. You can tell that they've been kind of used. They are fantastic. I've used them for deeds and for field combat kind of concepts. They're very nice, and they have lots of movement, and I'd say pretty good protection for what their intended purposes are. And they allow me to grip and do things in different directions. Already with this, we can see that again, my hand size is larger than my hand size. So if I hold this right here in place, by virtue of what I'm holding on this, I am basically only getting my index finger and my thumb to grip onto the handle of this potentially two-handed sword. And because of that, if I index the way I had before here, where now I'm holding this even further back, it's not my ring finger that's holding on this, it's actually my index finger. I have the same length that happens with this sword, and I still maintain a lot of the motions necessary to perform certain actions when I'm gripped on this. Again, I don't have, if I try to make this tighter here, it's tight, but now my wrists are locked up, and my sword is basically up in the air like this, rather than being extended from me. So that right there are some of the anatomical considerations already that we're seeing with this. We know that Fiore says this is a position that's good for both in armor and out, which means that gauntlets of a similar fashion are going to be a consideration for this. And that by doing that, by gripping this in the spot where I have the pommel, I actually create a rotation piece here. Now again, this does not mean that this is how every person fought with swords. It only means that Fiore depicts constantly a sword that has got some type of disc pommel, sometimes a curved or straight cross guard within his manuscript, which tells me he's got a type. He's got a typology that he prefers, much like a person in the modern era may have a type when it comes down to firearms. So that basically means right here, I have the ability to do all the things which Fiore tells me to do. And it's not by grabbing on the handle, because my lead hand's got to be able to do that. It's by grabbing onto the pommel. So as you can see with the video, there is quite a bit that even just having a padded glove limits on as far as being able how to grip on certain historical lengths of handles of swords. Now, by no means whatsoever am I saying that swords are limited to a specific style of grip length as depicted by the one that I'm using right here, which again is a Jesse Belsky stage sword that I have that's modeled off of the dimensions of the Albion Cressy. I'm not saying that this is the only grips of swords out there. I personally argue that I think many people, it was more of about a handling position, about how much, what you actually liked for your handling. And that right there was really a personal choice. In trying to understand the manuscript right here, as far as building my own style of how I like to grip swords and how I like to handle them, this kind of thing right here has been a big concept right here as far as looking at it. It's because ultimately, if you have other maestros and other manuscripts that talk about making sure that you hold it between the pommel and the crossguard on the haft of the sword. You see depictions later on that show them using their hand almost like it's cupping on the pommel to get certain types of thrusts. And these are extremely long handles. Now, why does that matter for the practice of Fiore? Again, it largely comes down to the practice of, in my opinion, armor. And because you're trying to make sure that you fight one way or the other, and it becomes synonymous with itself, you don't change. It's too much process to change from one position to the next. If you've trained one area right here, your body's going to fall into that mode of thinking. You don't just snap out of it. And because we're talking about the lethal engagement, at least how I see what Fiore's manuscripts are within the Getty and his other manuscripts, in other words, with the Pisani Dossi and the Morgan, what we understand here is that because that's the case here, he's talking about making sure that replicates across all platforms that a person may be dealing with. By making sure that persons can grab and fight with this type of a sword, again, I have the ability to fight quite with a longer grip and be able to project the threat and use this thing to its combat proficiency as it would be utilized in that time period. So that's going to do it for this video right here. Again, this is a quick video that I wanted to put together here in regards to how to grip the swords and why it may have been the way that it is. Personally, after having experienced it this way where I have more of a pommel grip, if you will, I actually like that a lot more because it's not about cutting with this thing, it's about the point. At least that's how I see it. Yes, of course you can strike somebody, but at the end of the day here, the thing that's really doing a lot of the pointing and killing of the time and the threatening is the thrust. And by having that handle right here, I can project that, and I can also, I'm not married so quickly to it, I can shift off quite easily and be able to utilize this thing within the 6 dissimilar grips or guards, however you see it, of his manuscript. So that's going to do it for this video right here, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, share with a friend out there. I wanted to grow this channel as much as possible, and that's not possible without viewers like you. So please share with a friend out there, hit the bell to make sure that you get the notifications when we drop new content, and we'd love to have you along for this ride of the 14th century chivalric arms. And until I see you all out there, everybody, please stay safe out there, train well, and fight on. I'll see you all soon.